China has made economic miracle, lifting 800 million people out of extreme poverty. China made breakthrough technologies such as DeepSeek, have their own space station. Basically, China's improvement in the past 40 years is a miracle on many levels. If the system really, like some Western politicians, media said, doesn't work, it's authoritarian, it's useless. If it's really that bad, can China really make that much improvement? Can China really improving the living standards of 1.4 billion people? I mean, if that's the basic questions we need to ask. If the Western system is much, 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 much better, is much superior, how come they are not the ones lifting millions, billions of people out of extreme poverty?
Welcome to the Global Majority for Peace podcast. I'm Ileana Chan. Every week on this podcast, we discuss with special guests from across the world our mission of building a global movement to challenge the US-led war drive against China, Russia, and countries in the global south. So please subscribe, share, comment, join the discussion, and also become a member of Patreon to get the full episode today. We are delighted that joining us again back on Global Majority for Peace is Li Jingjing. Li Jingjing is a prominent Chinese journalist, analyst, and commentator on international affairs. She's the host of the Talk It Out with Li Jingjing show on YouTube, so check that out. Link will be below in the description. Welcome, Li Jingjing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, it's so exciting. We needed to get you back because, there's been so many developments since we last got you on, you were, I think, our second ever guest, which was a huge honor for us. So we were thrilled. So a lot has happened since then. This time around, however, we've slightly changed a little bit of the format of the interviews because we like to start with something more personal. We like to sort of understand how our guests became politicized. So could you explain to us the origin of your politicization and whether or not there was a specific incident that led you to where you are?
Thank you. I'm very honored to be one of the first guests to your show. So I have been working as a journalist in China for over 10 years now. So in the past 10 years working as a journalist, I traveled to every corner of China to cover all the things, all the great stories happening in China, trying to speak to as many people as possible and people from all walks of life, from different ethnic groups, to understand my own culture, my own country, because China is quite a large country with 56 different ethnic groups. There's a lot going on. And I covered a lot of poverty alleviation projects on the ground to see how it has been carried out. I'm very fortunate that I've been doing this job because it helped to open my eyes, help me to understand my own country, that I never thought that I was that deep, and the lifestyles are on so many different levels. So in terms of how it became very vocal about politics, well, I think that started several years ago when there's a peak for anti-China propaganda in the West. So many things, suddenly there's so many things negative about China, and most of them are wrong about China, like the COVID, the riots in Hong Kong, all this narrative about Xinjiang. And as someone who was born and raised in China, and being as a journalist that I always go to the front lines to see the things, with my own eyes, to talk to the people on the ground, I understand what some Western media has been saying is totally wrong. It's totally wrong, but it has a huge negative impact to Western audience. They always see China through this negative perspective. They never got to see anything right or positive about China. So everybody in the West was afraid of China somehow, even though China is so far away, never done anything horrible to them. But many of them totally believe China is the threat. China gonna do evil things to them anytime. Besides the Western audience, this kind of anti-China propaganda is also damaging to Chinese people, to Asian people. I've met a lot of overseas Chinese who either immigrated to other countries or went to other countries to study or just basically born and raised as Chinese diaspora in other countries. And they have been telling me, I mean, all those racist anti-China propaganda has been damaging them because they start to doubt themselves. They start to doubt their own country to a degree that they even want to separate themselves from their own roots, their own culture, just because they've been told, oh, China is bad, China is evil, Chinese people are inferior, like disgusting. So this kind of anti-China propaganda is so dangerous to even the people coming from this culture. So I think, well, I'm a journalist. I know what's happening on the ground. I can communicate with both audiences. So how about let me tell stories of my own country, my own culture to those who are really interested in understanding. So that's why I became very vocal on social networks.
Yeah, and I have to say, speaking for myself as well as an overseas Chinese person, I really have appreciated your contributions to this space because I
Thank you.
too hear all the propaganda, and it's like, where do we get? I mean, so sadly, my confession is my Chinese is very, very basic. So where do I get the information, unless it's from someone like you that's actually on the ground and can speak English and can push back on the narratives, that understands. So I've just been so grateful to have your show and to follow your show and follow your travels and everything. I mean, there's
Thank you so much.
definitely there is definitely this perception here in the West that China is an authoritarian regime where Xi Jinping makes all the decisions unilaterally and that there are no elections. However, there are many different political processes in China, and I'm so excited to have you on to explain them to us. I'll just list a few that I researched before getting to the question, but there is the
Mhm.
Party Congress held every 5 years, where the Communist Party of China outlines its policies, elects its leadership, and sets the direction of the country. The most recent one was the 20th Party Congress in 2022. There are the plenary sessions of the CPC Central Committee, which occur multiple times during a 5 year term. And also, most recently in early March, China had the two sessions, the annual series of meetings between the two key political bodies, the National People's Congress, NPC, China's top legislative body, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC.
Yes.
Certainly, there are huge differences between Western political systems and China's, and there are significant misunderstandings about this Chinese system. So, could you break it down for us?
Yeah, it's very complicated system. Of course, I will try to simplify it. But I think to those who think China is as a authoritarian state that the system doesn't work, I just want to ask them a simple question. You already saw that in the past few years, China has made economic miracle, lifting 800 million people out of extreme poverty. China made breakthrough technologies such as DeepSeek, have their own space station. Basically, China's improvement in the past 40 years is a miracle on many levels. If the system really, like some Western politicians, media said, is doesn't work, it's authoritarian, it's useless. If it's really that bad, can China really make that much improvement? Can China really like improving the living standards of 1.4 billion people? I mean, if that's the basic questions we need to ask. If the Western system is much, 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 much better, is much superior, how come they are not the ones lifting millions, billions of people out of extreme poverty? Rather, they are putting people into poverty. So, I mean, that's the basic question we need to ask, right? So, if you're seeing the concrete facts, the results, maybe one should start to ask, oh, maybe there's something, or not as simple as the media or some politician are saying. So I can try to explain how the system works in China, but this is not trying to say, well, China's system is the best system or China's system or like suits you. Everybody should adopt this system. No, I think China has find its own solution, own political system that really suits China, suits China's cultural, historical, and political situation. So I think it's very time worthy that we're discussing this because we just had this annual most important political meeting in China that took place from early March to mid March. That is, like I mentioned, the National People's Congress, or NPC, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the CPPCC. So NPC and CPPCC together, these two sessions are what we refer to as two sessions. It's the annual meeting every March taking place here in Beijing. And what are they doing, the two sessions? It sets the yearly goals for the whole country, military, economic, technology, and everything. So it sets everything for the whole country. So actually, this system broadly involves people from all ethnic groups, all walks of life, all background to be in the decision making and the policy making process. Everyone can have a say, can bring their advice, opinions, and make that into a policy that are going to improve their lives. Because why? So that comes the very like central point about China's political system, because the NPC, National People's Congress, is China's top legislature and the highest organ of state power. So we have almost 3,000 deputies to National People's Congress. These 3,000 deputies come from, like I mentioned, every ethnic group, every background. Some are members of CPC, some are not. Some work in business, some work in culture, some work in technology industry. They come from every background, and they are the one who shape China because they have the power to legislate, to appoint and remove officials, to make decisions on matters of national development and supervise. So this NPC, National People's Congress, is the crucial institutional guarantee for the effectiveness running of the country. So it just in March, the 3,000 deputies came to Beijing to already make the plans and approve the government's work report and made some changes in some laws. So some will wonder, can the 3,000 people really represent 1.4 billion population? Well, before the national two sessions in March, actually the people's congresses at all levels were already held in February. It started from village, county, township, city to provincial levels all the way up. So each level has their People's Congress, and that they were held before the National People's Congress to make sure people's advice, motions could be raised from bottom to up. And that happens every year. So that's how people's voice are raised to the national level.
Can I just clarify that for my understanding? So the two sessions is like we're saying the NPC, which is the 3,000 people. And like you're saying, they are dealing with legislative leadership. That's them, the 3,000. But then the CPCC, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, my understanding of that is that it's a representative of the 56 ethnicities and minorities.
No, no,
Is
no.
that not right?
Uh, no, no, no. So the NPC, it is a little bit complicated. People from different ethnic groups are also deputies to NPC. They are the ones who have all the power to remove officials, to change laws, to legislate. They also come from different ethnic groups. And the interesting thing is, because China, there are 56 different ethnic groups, and we have to make sure each ethnic group at least has one representative at the national level. Everyone needs to be represented. The CPPCC is a system as like multi-party cooperation system, because CPPCC, the members to CPPCC, they also come from different backgrounds. Some of them belongs to some party. Like in China, there's another thing that debunk Western narrative. Some Western media also say, oh, China is just one party country. No, there are multiple parties in China. CPC is the leader, is the leading ruling party, but we also have 8 other parties that works with CPC. They also bring their advice, their opinions. That's why the CPPCC is the China's political consultative. The consultative who are providing this consultants. The other parties and people from other organizations like All Women Federation, All China Youth Federation. There are some other organizations, and also people from different cultural background, from the sports background. So those people are the members to CPPCC.
Yeah, it is a little confusing. It's very, very interesting though. So the NPC, how do they get the position of being part of the NPC? You said it started in February, that process?
The deputies to NPC, they are elected. They are elected, and once they're elected, they serve for 5 years. The current deputies were elected a year ago, so they will serve for 5 years. And after 5 years, they will re-elect deputies. And the previous deputies can be re-elected, or you can elect new ones. And they come from different organizations, different companies, different backgrounds. They can nominate their preferred deputy. They think, oh, this person is very worthy. Like maybe he's a very experienced doctor in medical field, and he has so much experience, have deep connections with people. So maybe this unit is like, oh, I think he's qualified. Let's nominate a few people. So like there are different ways. And from city above, from city levels to provincial levels, it normally will be nominated, suggested by a certain unit, by certain organizations, or maybe just this individual. If there are at least 10 deputies, can nominate this one individual. Like 10 deputies think, oh, this person, I think he's qualified. Let's nominate him. So at least if there are 10 deputies nominate this person can also be nominated. But like below city level, like in villages, in counties, the deputies are directly voted by people, like by grassroots people. So in villages, people like just all the villagers just go to vote. And interesting thing is, I think that so far there are 2.7, around that number, 2.7 million deputies at all levels across China, from like village, city, county. 2.7 million people have worked as deputies at all levels. And the majority, over 90 of them, are actually grassroots levels.
90% of them are at grassroots level.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
those are people are directly elected by villagers, people, and they live among the people. They have deep connections with people. They know exactly what's going on, what the problem, what the requirements those people need. So I think that's important. When you have
Yeah.
deputies, you need to know your people. You cannot be so out of reach person.
Exactly. That's what we do lack here in the West. So
Yeah,
is that NPC though? Or no,
yeah,
the
that's NPC.
2.7 million is across the entire.
Oh, not NPC, that's People's Congress. So NPC is National People's Congress. National
Okay.
People's Congress is when you reach to the national level. So national level is the 3,000, but like the 2.7 million people are like at different levels across China.
Is that the CPPCC though? Or is that
No,
just across?
People's Congress, People's Congress.
Oh,
So
wow.
People's
Okay.
Congresses, the system of People's Congresses are the
Oh,
institutional guarantee and the basic, like the fundamental system of China that make sure people's voice could be raised. So I think you can just remember as the People's Congress, the system of
People's
People's
Congress.
Congresses.
So the
Mm.
NPC has 3,000. That's the top legislative body. The People Congress has 2.7 million.
The People's Congresses include all
It
levels, including
includes
the
all
national
levels.
level, yeah, provincial level, city levels.
Okay. And then the CPPCC, what is that?
Mhm.
How many people are involved in that and how do
It's
they?
almost is I think I forgot the exact number, but around the same number, around 3,000. That include people from, like I mentioned, the 8 other parties, and also the organizations. Like many of them don't belong to any party. They just like no party affiliation, but they're from different organizations, and also from different fields like arts, movie, sports industry. There were several members of the CPPCC that I think our Western audiences also know. For example, there's someone, a famous person who used to be a member of CPPCC, Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan
Oh,
used to be a member of the CPPCC. He brought many advice to the national level, such as giving more opportunities to kids in villages to watch movies, maybe build more theaters, cinemas in the villages. And another person that is famous who used to be a member of the CPPCC, Yao Ming, the NBA basketball player. And of course, his advice is about sports. I remember one year his advice was about how to keep improving training young people, effectively training young people. Also, there are several famous actors, actresses from Hong Kong that made blockbusters in the West are also members to PCC. So that just to give you an idea like how they are trying to involve people from different background to in this CPPCC, which is the multi-party cooperation system, and it built a united front, including people from different parties and people from with no party affiliations, with different backgrounds, to also give their voice, even though they don't have the power to legislate, to remove and elect officials, but they also sit at this national meeting and hear the work report, discuss with the CPC. They can bring their advice to the national level, and their advice will be considered by NPC, by leaders. So that's how it works. So this is I think both sessions. One is the one who like make laws, who have the power to legislate, we exercise the power, state power, and the CPPCC is a united front. It's a multi-party cooperation system that ensure people from different fields have their say on national matters.
Oh, okay. Now I'm getting it. Thank you so much for that explanation. That really does elucidate things for me. Thank you. It's a really fascinating system. And you were actually on the ground covering 2 sessions this
Mhm.
year. Can we have some insights from you on what the targets were from last year, what the reports were from last year, and what the goals are for the coming year?
Every year China's 2 sessions is getting more and more international attention, which is very interesting. I guess just because every move China makes, either economic, technology, has a global impact. So this year there are many highlights that got a global attention. Of course, economy, how China continued to develop its economy. And China came out with a series of economic plans that continue to boost China's economy and also boost the global economy. I remember our Prime Minister Wang Yi said China will bring certainty to this uncertain world. They will continue to open up, welcome business people from all around the world to come to China, do businesses. China will not close its door. And meanwhile, China will came out with a series of plans to boost domestic consumption. Previously, China's economy was really like export driven economy. But as we know, the changing world, that's not very healthy. So China knows its potential, and China still has a huge potential for domestic consumption that hasn't been released yet. So China has decided to shift the focus to make China's economy a domestic consumption driven economy. That's the focus economically. And internationally, China is very determined that China will be a pillar for the global south and will continue to speak for the justice of the global south. And that's not going to change. And I mean, because it's a domestic plan that sets yearly goals, there are many things. China pay a lot of attention on technology. I think China pays utmost importance to AI technology in the future, and they want to use the high-tech, innovative technology in every field, not just economy. They want to encourage everyone to use high-tech in, say, agriculture industry, in education industry. I mean, that's what technology is for. You need to use the technology to improve people's life, not just to make money. And they want to make sure those technology people, you just adapt those technology in this field. Also, there's one thing probably Western media or people outside of China didn't realize how much attention China has been paying in this field is agriculture. Like economy, technology, national defense. Yes, all these areas are important, but the number one priority for China has always been agriculture, farmers, and rural areas. That's China's number one priority. That can be shown from the number one central government document that China released every year. The number one central government documents, which indicates the government's priority, has always been on agriculture, on rural regions, on improving farmers' life. And this year, it's even more important. I think for every global south countries, I know your viewers are most about like from global south countries. I think it's very important for global south countries because China has been very clear. China knows that the importance of having food sovereignty for a country. That's the basic for everything. You need to keep your people fed. You cannot, the China, we have a saying, the football of the Chinese people need to be held by Chinese people. You need to make sure there's enough food to eat to have the basic stability. And history taught us that many countries in the global south, developing countries, food sovereignty has been totally destroyed by the neoliberalism. That's what neoliberalism, imperialism, colonialism are designed to do. Destroy your fertile land, destroy your ability to feed yourself. So you only export your raw materials, these natural products, to global north, to developed countries with a cheap price because they are low value added products. And then you buy, you consume all these high value added products from global north, from these countries. And so you're always on a deficit. You never outcompete these global north countries. So the global south countries, many countries used to be the bread basket for the region. They used to be so food sufficient, but then somehow they need to import all the food. I think 80 years, like 100 years ago, many countries in the global south were like, they have enough wheat, crops, everything for its people. Now suddenly they have to import 80% of their food and even oil. And that's insane. And that's what this neocolonialism has done to this country, because you only grow cash crops. Cash crop means like coffee beans, bananas, tobacco, these things for the entertainment of catering the rich people in the global north. And you no longer grow wheat, this basic food that you people need to eat, rely on. And you imported this thing from global north countries. So you made yourself at a vulnerable place. You produce things you don't consume. So that's the result. So I think China never let that happen. So that's why for the past few years, agriculture, improving farmers' living standards, improving rural regions has always been number one priority. Like never lose food sovereignty. Always keep the football at your own hand. And that's the foundation for any development. That's just one example of this one priority of this year's two sessions.
I also wanted to talk about Tibet and Xinjiang. I mean, these are regions that are extremely controversial here in the West. There's just so much misinformation about it. Obviously, these two regions they have a voice in the two sessions. So could you just talk a little bit about that, but also get into maybe some of the updated information about those regions? Because I think anything that we say is like propaganda from like 20 years ago. Like that's generally what the West is parroting and repeating at the moment.
So anyone who still believe this Xinjiang genocide narrative, I was like, you need to go read something. You need to have your brain checked. Sorry to say that, because I recently I made this video. I think you saw it on my Instagram, on my TikTok, how these two French journalists came to China, want to find this forced labor from Xinjiang. But the whole video, I debunked it. The whole video was based on lies. Was based on lies. Even though they didn't find any Uyghur person in this factory, they still concluded that this factory was using forced labor from Xinjiang. And how did they came to the conclusion? And that's so absurd, because they thought the recruitment video of this factory, the lady in the recruitment video was saying we hire people from Xinjiang and North Korea. And to us Chinese who understand Chinese, like, what are you talking about? Because the lady in the recruitment video speaks Shandong dialect with strong accent. So that made overtime payment bonus like 满勤奖. But the lady said with the Shandong accent, 满勤奖. And another term is the 超天数奖. Like if you work for more days, we'll give compensation for the more days. 超天数奖, like 朝天数奖 with accent. So these two French journalists with the poor Chinese skills, they thought, oh, that sounds like Xinjiang and North Korea. And that's how they came to the conclusion. Oh, that's Xinjiang, North Korea. Which in fact, the lady said overtime pay, overtime bonus.
I mean, the deep irony of this too is that in your video you showed them double checking with Adrian Zenz. we can trace the Xinjiang genocide claims to Adrian Zand. He's part of the Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation, a Washington, D.C. based think tank, which this is one of those very typical think tanks that are U.S. propaganda, anti-communist type of thing. It's the type of thing like NED or USAID type of funded thing. And they actually double checked with him, but he doesn't speak Mandarin either.
Yeah.
So why would they double check with someone who isn't fluent in Mandarin? It's completely farcical. But can you also talk about what the effect is for Uyghurs in that region in terms of employment? Because now it's
Mm.
basically like anyone who is Uyghur that is working is being claimed as forced labor.
That's what this Western propaganda is trying to do. And they have been doing that, not just in China, across the world, saying one country or one leader or some people are doing horrible things. And in the name of protecting, say, the vulnerable group, they are trying to force these people out of work. Say, like what they're trying to do, this is called atrocity propaganda, I think. Atrocity claim, accuse you of doing atrocity. But in fact, what they are trying to do is really destroy the people. They say they care about Uyghurs. Oh, you cannot hire Uyghur people because we believe you are abusing Uyghurs. Yeah, all the Uyghurs are forced labor. So many factories, many brands were afraid of such accusation, facing the protest, and so they have no choice but to not hire any Uyghurs or ethnic minorities. When no company hire a group of people, what are they gonna do? They're unemployed. You put these people into a horrible financial condition. So what are they gonna do? I think one thing is in many regions they try to push these people into this situation for recruitment for terror groups that happen in many countries in Central Asia. When you are forcing people out of work, you make their life miserable. They have no other means to make a living. Then these people can only be hired by, say, people from terror groups with horrible plans to do whatever evil things because they have to make a living. So this kind of anti-China or the Xinjiang narrative, what they were trying to do is get Uyghur people from Xinjiang out of work. Xinjiang is a very fertile land. They have many agricultural products like cotton, like tomatoes. So when those products were no longer being consumed, then the farmers, the local people have no incomes. And what are they going to do? They're going to create instabilities. That's what this atrocity propaganda was trying to do, try to create instabilities within a region. They did that in many countries in the Middle East and in Africa, in Latin America. We saw the same thing happen again and again and again, trying to create instabilities within a region. But they failed miserably in Xinjiang. They failed miserably in China. They want to create instabilities in China, but that just doesn't work. Luckily, China's government has incredible plans to make sure the fruits of development can be shared by everyone. And even though some Western brands, because of the Western media's Xinjiang genocide narrative, they cut cooperation with the products from Xinjiang, and some people were put out of work. But China's central government came out with plans to support all these local people, local businesses, to make sure they won't go bankrupt, to make sure they will be employed. So I can give you some example how ethnic minorities, whether they are from Xinjiang, whether they are from Xinjiang, Tibet, or other regions, have always been supported by the government, starting from education. Because in China, we have this 9 years of compulsory education. Whether you're from village or cities, you have to send your kids to schools to have 9 years of compulsory education. But in Tibet, now we call them Xizang Autonomous Region, and Xinjiang, we got Autonomous Region. The kids in those two regions enjoy 15 years of compulsory education. All free, by the way. It's not forcing you to pay the money to schools. It's free education, 15 years. Because regions, provinces in the west of China are less developed compared to the provinces in the coastal regions in southeast. Now, China tried to reduce the wealth gap between regions. So for the past decades, prioritize, allocate resources to the West to make sure people from that region can play on the same level field. So to make sure the kids in those regions can have access better education, because in Tibet, Xinjiang, 15 years of free education. And also the schools will provide nutritious meals. And those ethnic minority kids can also have extra scores for college entrance exam. And the how many scores you can get depends on the population of your ethnic group. If you come from an ethnic group that just with maybe just a few thousand people, such a few population, then you can get maybe 30 scores or even more. Just to prioritize, you have the opportunity to go to top universities in cities like Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou. So, I mean, education is the most important tool for someone that you want to change your fate. So it starts with the education. Make sure everyone has the opportunity. And work is the same. Like in Xinjiang and Xinjiang, for companies, state-owned companies or governments, there are regulations that you have to hire a certain percentage of ethnic minorities to make sure everyone has the work opportunities. So all this forced labor narrative is just so lame that I mean we don't need forced labor. To their eyes, any working Uyghur or any working Chinese is a forced labor. We just do our work. That's how we earn money. And luckily, everyone across the country, including the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region and the Xizang Autonomous Region, were lifted out of poverty by 2020. And many of them kids got a group community in Beijing because many of them are studying in Beijing. Oh, that just reminds me of another system. We also have this system just to make sure that some of the best students from Xinjiang and Xizang can definitely go to top universities in Beijing and Shanghai. So these kids have been studying in Beijing and Shanghai since high school, and they will go to one of the best universities in Beijing and Shanghai to give them more opportunities to study. So back to the video, I debunked the two French reporters. If there really is a forced labor with forcing Uyghur people to be forced labor, if there is a Xinjiang genocide, why would they need to make a video based on lies? Why would they need to make a video documentary based on lies? If all the narrative is so true, you could easily find anything, right? You can easily find a picture of a genocide or force, like why the two French reporter went through the factory and couldn't even find a single Uyghur face. And why do you need to go to a German expert to confirm what the Chinese person is saying? The German expert doesn't speak any Chinese. The German has never come to China, I think, or at least he has never been to Xinjiang, but somehow he has been regarded as the Xinjiang expert by all these Western think tanks and Western media. Why? How? What qualified him? Because he wrote several research sponsored by ASPI or some think tanks, and the think tanks were also sponsored by Washington, D.C., and this so-called German expert, all his research are ridiculous. They just grabbed some documents from Chinese government and just twisted the things that were written in the government. It may sound true to Western audience, but for us, we're like, well, no, that's not what they're talking about. So he's good at twisting facts, twisting government work reports, and someone who has zero credibility to talk about China. Somehow they're the ones they go to confirm the Chinese. I was like, ask me, I speak Chinese, ask me, I can tell you. Like, you just suck at Chinese, you mistranslate something.
Thank you for watching the first part of our interview with Li Jingjing. Please go to patreon.com/EmpireWatch for the full episode. Full audio podcasts are available on Spotify and Amazon Music every Saturday.